Call the special legislation meeting to order. And the first thing on the agenda is a discussion of regulation of bins and boxes. And Valerie Walker, yes, welcome.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And you are here from Planet Aid.
Correct.
And I would, appreciate it if you could tell us what, if you want to give us a rundown on what you're looking for.
Right. So first of all, I want to say thank you for allowing us to be in your city. We have about 22 bins in your city, and we are a nonprofit. We do the recycling of clothing and shoes. Our office is located in Solon. We're in 14 states. And the reason for my visit today really is that, again, we are a 501c3. There have been other companies coming in out of the Michigan area. There's some new bins coming out of the California area. And they've been placing bins without permission at the different businesses. And this problem has become such a big issue that other cities have just passed ordinance stating that only those that are nonprofit can place a bin in their city.
Let me ask you a question. They're placing it on the private property,
Yeah,
and the private property owners don't know about it.
exactly.
Don't
With
they
the
just
business-
don't they just call the truck and say throw it away, or?
Well, you would think so, but I just don't think the business owners understand what to do with a bin. And I think they're trying to give them common courtesy of dialing the number on the bin and hoping that someone returns a call and handles the situation, and that's not happening.
I guess I'm just confused because if I'm a private, I would just say call them up, say hey, haul it away and throw it in the garbage.
I agree,
I guess
but it's just not happening, and it's just amazing to me that, because what they're saying is that they come in, they close up at night, come back in the morning, and there's this bin sitting there, and they don't really know what to do with it. And I've seen some bins stay on a lot for a very long time, and the owner is saying, I keep calling, they won't come get it, and then I finally said, well, you have the right
Right.
to have it towed away.
Right.
But they don't seem to grasp that. So, but again, the cities have just started passing their ordinance stating that, if you're not nonprofit, we just don't want to have you place.
Well, let me ask you that question. If they do it now and just throw stuff on there, what's an ordinance gonna do? I guess that's another question.
Because what happens is that then it becomes into a regulation situation. So every bin, like right now, again, we have 22 bins in your city, but they are not registered with your city. So we've been allowed to come in and we get permission from the owner, we place the bin, but the cities are not, we're not registering with the cities in the past. If we pass this ordinance, we will have to register every bin in the city. You have a contact information, and then we have to pay us a fee for being in the city from this point on. That has not
Anybody
been
who puts a
happening.
bin in the city.
Correct, I'm sorry?
Anybody who puts a bin in it.
Correct. So what happens is that if you have not registered, if you're a for-profit, all of that, then you will not be in compliance.
If I may, I think it's similar to the private hauler and sanitation. We require a hauler, any hauler outside the city coming in to register as a hauler. They pay a fee of $300 for the fiscal year. They register their trucks, and we have the right to inspect them. So I think what I'm hearing is that similar to what
Yeah.
our
I
private
guess I'm just
hauler-
amazed that a private property owner would just do
Yeah,
it.
Oh, I-
I am as well.
I agree with you. I don't get it.
The 22 bins that are here, they're like in parking lots of grocery stores or?
Yeah, for example, grocery stores, businesses, whatever the parking lot of that particular company, yes.
One across the street from the cemetery entrance there.
Churches we're in sometimes, and then we work with the schools in the cities. We actually we don't want to have bins in your city and just take from the city. We want to partner with the city and be able to get back. So we have bins on the other schools' parking lots, and we give them 2 cents per pound. We give them the churches, in some cases, 5 cents per pound. So we want to just kind of partner with the city as we move forward.
Is it just clothes, or is it?
Clothes and shoes.
And shoes, not.
Any type of textile. Greatly used, gently used, we take it all.
Can I ask you, Miss, what happens to people put garbage in there sometimes?
That's our
also?
responsibility.
How do you
So,
police that?
for example, if we've had some interesting items
I
set
imagine.
outside. Set
To dump in the middle of the night.
But it's our responsibility to pick up all of that. Mattresses, we had a toilet stool sitting out there. Go figure, but it happens. And so it is our responsibility to clean up all of that because it's, we want to keep things clean. You have a beautiful city here, and it's just our responsibility to do that. And we do have a 24-hour response time. So for example, if the bin, say someone pulls up, they just, went through all their things at home and they're moving or whatever it may be, they will, and the bin is full at that point, and it begins to overflow. You can call the office, and within 24 hours, we'll be here to pick it up.
So the only question I have is, I mean, you're talking shoes and clothes, but we also had igloos out there for glass, for paper. We had paper issues with the school things and all that. I mean, I guess I don't know how far the ordinance, if we did one, how far it would have to go, because we got all these other related issues to
Right,
things.
well, we don't have the igloos anymore for the glass.
But I think, there's other ones out there, I think.
Abitibi's still around,
Yeah,
right?
Abitibi is.
Abitibi's still around, I know.
Wasn't there
And
an
some of
agreement
the
worked out with that,
ordinance-
Jim? Was Abitibi the agreement worked to keep them?
No, they just started,
There was an agreement that the commissioners wouldn't enforce it.
Okay,
Let
so
it
it's
go
sort of
because it
a,
was supporting churches or not.
kind of an off the books.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
after they had them all removed, then.
Yes.
And then also in the ordinance, it's, but like Cleveland has passed it, Brook Park, Parma Heights is on their agenda, Oakwood. So the cities are jumping aboard on this because it has become such an issue. But one thing in the ordinance that it says is that only one company per location. A business does not need to have a rainbow of bins in their parking lot. So only one per company, and that's how it should be anyway. But again.
Can you have an ordinance that restricts, that's restrictive of that?
I guess I don't know, you got private property rights, and that's why I was bringing up the other question. And a private property owner, I mean, they have a right to do what they want on their property to a certain extent. But,
Right.
I mean, I guess I don't know, I guess you could limit it, but I guess the question would be, as a private property owner, if you really want to help, why would you want to limit it? Because, you may have a clothes bin, you may have a paper bin, you may have and there could be multiple bins on one property. Providing different services, I guess,
Right.
I guess I don't know, I got to think about
Because,
that.
we have, and I know it's not identical, but we have, they're not newspapers, but we have those things that, buy a newspaper, where you buy a newspaper on the street.
Oh, yeah.
And people put up whatever for advertising. We really can't, we looked at it because of the district or whatever, but you really can't limit it because of the
Freedom of speech.
freedom of speech. You can't do that. And it would be, I think I understand what you're saying. I guess first of all, if you're a private property owner and one shows up one day and you didn't know about it, it might be confusing because you might just think it's another, who it is, and you might just leave it go. I don't know. And what you're talking about limiting are for-profit, and you guys are not-for-profit. And so we would be limiting to you or anybody else then who was doing a similar service, not-for-profit. And the ones that you've given as an example that people have called up to say, where did you come from, or what, nobody ever responded, there is no business actually behind them, or there is just no,
That's just the way they do business. Now, you may recognize it more by the blue bin. If you've seen a blue bin, there's a black bin, there is a wide white bin, and then there's latest one is a tall white bin, and they're 7th generation out of California. And so they came into the city with the same behavior of just dropping bins without permission. And they're on Rite Aid's parking lots, Walgreens parking lots, and we know that they don't allow that. Hyman's parking lots, we just know. And when I first saw them come into the city, those are the places that they're placing them and what they're doing it strictly without permission. I've even gone in and asked the managers, and they said, no, we didn't ask them to be here, and we're trying to figure it out.
Oh, I take it to the scrapyard. I'm gonna make some money.
If I can just, I don't know if the recent zoning code updates that we did actually incorporated a whole section about regulation of donation boxes and dumpsters and recycling and trash handling areas. So 115505 of the zoning code talks about it. It doesn't limit it to for-profit, nonprofit. In my experience, I think that's not really a land use issue. What the profit status, the IRS status of a property really isn't necessarily isn't a land use issue. It's about the placement, the condition, the location of donation boxes, and the code addresses it. It's listed, our code, this subsection B in particular, doesn't require a permit process or anything. It's more of, it's gonna be a reactive enforcement process. There's a question about ones that would have to be cleared with legal. We didn't have any regulations for donation boxes prior to July of this year. We do now. What kind of non-conforming status does any that existed prior to the code have? We're gonna ferret that out, but it's not a permitting process or a registration process. It's more of a, if it's a problem and we see that it's a problem, we know that it's a new one that's been put in after the code, then we can, and it's something that is the property owner's responsibility ultimately, if it violates the code, it's a violation on their property.
Well, it seems like a lot of them would, because it says in D2, on or in required parking. If it's a required parking, I'm assuming it's a parking space that is approved, that you need so many parking spaces for your business to operate?
And that goes to interpretation of enforcement. Some properties have more parking spaces striped than are required.
Yeah, okay,
So if they're in that surplus, then
then it doesn't matter.
that could, or you could just say, it's in a striped parking space.
Jonathan,
Move it out.
if I may, it says permittee, but you're not requiring a permit then, because the reference is permittee.
2A.
Yeah, as in a,
Just as a reference.
as a term of art as opposed
Secure
to requiring a permit, yeah.
Well, this is really pretty specific and really pretty comprehensive. I mean, as
It
far
is.
as new controls, really well put together. And I guess out of this, the only thing we're not addressing, I guess the one issue we wouldn't be addressing is the private versus, or the non-profit versus profit.
And does this limit the number too, or no?
It does not.
I still don't know. I mean, we'd have to have the law director look at it. I just don't know how you would, I suppose there's ways to limit the number, but in some ways, I'm not quite sure
Wait, I don't know, that's what
how
I'm
you would
questioning.
how you would limit. I mean, I wouldn't want to see 20 of them lined up, and probably nobody would want to have 20 on private property. But on the other hand, if somebody, like you said, owned the property and they felt they had two good shots at donations, I'm not sure how we would say you can have two.
Well, I think the other nonprofit that does this is, I'm aware of, is Goodwill. I think some.
VA has a VA.
VA has one too?
Mhm. See,
That's a-
we have an office in Michigan, and the situation is out of control. And so we're seeing them come this way, and so our approach is to try to help you be proactive. So if we were to say that, just regulate it, maybe not just say specifically nonprofit or for-profit, but if we regulate it and say that we must register, have a permit, it will weed out those that are not doing business in the way we would have them to do business. We just don't want that. Coming here into Ohio, it's terrible in Michigan.
What are they doing in Michigan? Is everybody?
It's just a mess. They're just placing bins without permission, and it's just, the cities, they tug of war, and it's just it's out of control.
You have addressed some specific things in here, though, that would guarantee that these would be maintained and emptied, and, that's pretty specific
I mean,
language.
it gets more specific. The previous code, we could have applied property maintenance requirements to
Right.
it.
This one pretty much spells
But
it out, though.
This really says, donation boxes, keep them clean, keep them in order, keep them in good shape.
And the ones that you have listed basically are all nonprofit. And so we're already,
Mhm.
doing what we're supposed to be doing as far as asking for permission. We have it, a signed document for that, keeping them clean, having the name on the front, contact information, all of that, 24-hour response time. These are the ones that are probably abiding by that.
Right.
And
Right.
you have the others that are not.
Well, if they're not
So-
provided by, I guess the question is, first you gotta be notified of it, and then you would try to contact them. If they didn't respond, then what would we do? If, like you see, you contacted them and they call you back?
Well,
you
if
take
the
box?
owner of the box had gotten permission from the property owner, let's assume that situation, and it's not meeting these requirements, then we would send a notice to the property owner because we have to, because it's a violation on their property. So they're
Right.
ultimately responsible. And it would be good practice to contact the owner of the box too, just to cover the bases, in case the property owner doesn't let them know about the violation. The donation, if the box owner doesn't respond, then it's still the property owner's responsibility ultimately.
And if they didn't have permission from the property owner, you'd inform the property owner at that time, you could just have it taken away.
My
It's your property, you can do what you want with the box.
Yeah, I mean, I would word it as not
Right.
an attorney, but I
Right.
would say, generally, you have the right to enforce things on your own property, to give permission for access to your
Right.
property.
Are those picked up with a front loader, or how are they transported, do you know?
You mean,
With the garbage truck, a front loader garbage truck, or that's how they're maneuvered around
you
the
mean
boxes?
when they're placed initially?
Correct.
Yes, it's with a lift. Comes with, we have the big truck and then they have the lift to put it in position. May I answer your question?
Good, yes. Thank you.
Well, just maybe
Mayor?
for clarification, if a property owner calls, much like an abandoned vehicle, the tow company will come move it, but they're gonna have to pay to get it moved.
Right.
Now, what the tow company's gonna do is hold that thing then as collateral, and if the guy comes and gets it, they're gonna have to pay the storage and pay the tow fee.
Right.
And then they'll
Reimburse.
give the person who had it towed their money back. But if the person never claims it, then they'll eventually file for a court action to dispose of that property for the metal value or whatever. So there may be a little bit of reluctance in that the property owner has to expend some dollars. I don't know if there's interest in the committee, I was not aware of all of the details of this. If there's interest in the committee, it seems like we could probably resolve it by looking at 115505B2D and just add a provision that boxes can't be placed without the property owner's permission. And,
Well, that's already given though.
well,
And I guess
it is from a property owner standpoint, it's not by our ordinance.
Right.
I'm just saying, if we want to legislate that, I think by simply modifying the code and saying that no boxes will be placed without the property owner's permission, then we eliminate that whole issue of people just coming in the middle of the night and dropping them
I guess the only question, what would be the remedy?
there. Well, I think in the penalty section, then you could say that they can be removed or should be removed. If not by the company, then by the means that we've talked about already. But right now, we don't address whether or not there's permission granted. I agree with you as a property owner,
Yeah.
that assumption is there. but-
Because, I mean, they could avoid paying a tow truck, I mean, if they had the means, they could just take it themselves, I guess.
I
It's
think
on their property.
the way the zoning violations are done is that it's a violation on a property. So if we codify that it has to be the permission of the property owner, and then it's not instant violation of that, someone's in violation of an action that they never took. The property owner would be in violation of somebody putting a box without their permission. So we'd send you a property owner violation saying, here's a violation for a box on your property that you didn't give permission for, but it's your violation.
I don't know.
So you're saying
So it
the
might be-
planning code can only go after the property owner. They can't go after the person placing the box.
Because the property
Well,
violation.
I think as the city, I don't think we should give a violation. We should leave it as implicit to the property owner rights instead of codifying that it has to be there.
Because if you put it in there, then it's our responsibility that you're violating a property code, and you're not allowed to have a box on your property unless you said so. Or the owner would say, okay, I said it was allowed to be on there. I mean, that's the way to get around it, even though they didn't say it was allowed to be on there.
Yeah, I think it would probably be best if it's the ownership, whether there's permission or not, is not a codified item. That's a civil matter between private property owners of a thing and a property, and a piece of land.
Yeah,
I think it's
sure.
better left to that.
There's surely civil remedies.
Yeah.
Right. But you were mentioning that, I guess, how were the other communities, if they drop a box on there and they didn't have permission,
Every bin that is registered with the city, they will know that, they're in compliance. Those that have not registered, then they'll be in violation. And there's a fee, fines, and all of that
well, I
explained.
guess that's another question. I mean, it's a fee against the holders of it, but they're out of state, they don't care, they'll never pay them. You have to move the box out of there. I guess that's the question, because I would imagine if I'm out of the state and bringing back and bins in, I'm not gonna comply anyways. I'm not gonna pay you any fines or fees. I'm just gonna say, oh, sue me.
I think with the regulations that we have, this is getting to the land use issue that these boxes can generate. So it's condition, it's placement, it's attractant. It's an attractant for just dumping, for illegal dumping. So those are the land use issues that are being addressed. I think I'm going somewhere and I just lost it.
Welcome to old
I
age.
love it when you have that.
The land use issue is being dealt with. And I think that's really where the zoning code needs to focus on, is what is the land use issue that these create? I don't really think we need to get into the permission side, that they have to be permission. If, the point is, if we find out, oh, this is one that's in violation, and then the property owner says, well, I didn't give them permission to put it
Well,
there.
most of them
Then we
would
can
be in
suggest,
violation if
hey,
you're just dropping them off.
you can just remove it if you want, and then we don't have to give you any formal violation notices.
Because I'm just thinking, what
Because-
she's talking about, I don't know who would administer that. Who in the city is going to take on the obligation to, follow up on all the bins in the city and then contact?
I think for ease of enforcement, it's really the responsibility of the property owner, whether there's permission or not. You're a property owner of a property that attracts these, and if you're not paying attention to your property, that's your responsibility to pay attention to your property. If it generates fly dumping, then that's your violation, even though it's not your trash. It's your violation, and that's an unfortunate situation, but I think that's really the easiest way to,
Well, we-
then that property owner is gonna tell all of them to get off their property, and is gonna maybe be more vigilant on it. And it may hurt the good ones, it may hurt the bad ones, but
Because it sounds like most of these bins are being put on properties that are owned by corporate entities that are not paying attention to their property because they're a big, either landlord off with a big box on there.
out in the back 40 of the Walmart shopping center parking lot,
Right.
nobody cares.
That's
And the
probably-
local maintenance guy doesn't know, he's just there to make sure the pavement's in good condition, so that's usually the way it happens.
Okay. I think, if you look at the code that we have in place, which seems to me to really clarify most questions about this, for one thing. And I think, secondly, I understand the concern of what can happen, what could happen down the road, I guess, but at the moment, I don't know that we have a particular, I don't really know that we have a particular issue right here beyond what we would be able to address in this code. And that would leave us with really, I don't know, you guys can give me your opinion, we would only really be left with the question of profit, non-profit, and I'm not sure that we can, with private property, that we, without an opinion, we would want to go, we can really address the profit, non-profit on private property.
My position is it's not a land use issue.
Yeah.
The owner,
Yeah.
the IRS the tax status is not a land use issue, so
Yeah.
it really may not, in my opinion, isn't appropriate in the zoning code.
Well, and I commend you, John. I feel good that you addressed it with the new updates here, so I didn't realize that till I saw that today, so.
And it was already, I give the props to Greg Hannon, this was been in there since 12, so it's been in there, but, this is something that's there, and he was probably just being proactive, because in my time, I haven't had any complaints have been gone up to me regarding donation boxes, so, but it's good to proactively have the regulations in the code.
Well, it even sounds like this code here, it makes it a property owner issue too, that if there's more than 2 boxes on your property, you as a property owner have to take action to get rid of them, because you're not allowed more than 2 on your property. In section, what is this section?
Is your number? Okay.
Just read it.
John, are you reading the,
you reading
I
the
think you're reading the
sample
Cleveland.
legislation?
sample.
Yeah.
I read the Cleveland one.
Yeah, we went from Cleveland.
Okay.
It says you're allowed 2, no more than 2. Oh, here it is. 69A05B. No more than 2 outdoor donations shall be permitted on any parcel of property.
It's great for the city of Cleveland.
That's Cleveland.
That's Cleveland.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. I'm saying, so that would still be a property owner issue, because if you had 3, City of Cleveland would go up to the property owner and say, why do you have 3 on here?
Yeah,
And they would find the property owner.
Right.
yeah.
I guess I don't know, I mean, do we have this here that governs a lot of the issue about setbacks, and if there's a violation, which there probably would be a violation if somebody just came in and put a box in without even asking, they would just stick it probably not in the proper location.
And one of those is if we were aware of that, we would work with the property owner to say, hey, did you know that these were dropped on your property? It's in violation. If you want to get rid of
Well,
it,
that
it's
may
your right
answer
to get
some of
rid of
her
it.
questions, that the property owner then would understand their rights, and then they would handle the situation.
So, yeah, but how would that be enforced if it's not in any type of ordinance?
What
Well, it
is-
would just be kind of the public, the outreach that my department would do, to just say, hey, we're on the same team here. You guys know that this one, you know, do you know did you give permission for it? Because it's violating these 2 sections of our donation
Of our current
boxes
code,
code. So if you didn't, you have the right, if you didn't give permission, then you have the right to remove it.
We're still small enough, you know, and aware, I think, enough of, you know, businesses and what's in you know, what's in a parking lot, whose business it is, that we can do that kind of outreach that enables us to do things that aren't, you know, just, you know, that aren't black and white legislative, and we could probably handle that, you know, like Jonathan said, in a way that larger cities maybe can't handle. You know, and I think that if we got to the point where we had all sorts of issues, and, you know, then we would certainly want to go back and rethink it, but I really think that, you know, what we have here is pretty progressive, actually, and pretty forward-thinking, and at the moment, you know, at the time being, I don't know what you guys' opinion, but I would say we're going to stick with what we've got at the moment, but I appreciate you coming in, because I've never had a discussion.
Yes.
I've never actually heard a discussion about those collection boxes ever, and
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we have regulations that somewhat mirror Cleveland's to a certain extent.
we do.
And I guess this is a small enough city that I know that if there's a box put somewhere, somebody's gonna call somebody and say, hey, what's going on here?
Unless it goes in the Kmart
Yeah.
parking lot.
That's usually what happens.
Properties on Huntington that have large parking lots or whatnot, so it could happen.
Good? Yep, we're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I
Okay, thank
appreciate
you.
your,
Thank you.
all this information.
Yes.
It's always helpful. The next thing is, and it was also, I think this originated with Greg Hammond, it's been here for quite a while, is the discussion about the public art and historic district. And Jonathan and I talked about it frequently, that outside of the historic district, we really don't have, you know, we really don't have anything we really would need to regulate. You know, if something was in a residential area, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, residential area, and it's on someone's property, that's not something that we're gonna regulate.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was on a commercial property and it was a piece of public art that was on their private property that doesn't, you know, relate to the business in any way, it's just art for art's sake, it's like political science, it's freedom of speech, free speech, really we can't regulate it. What we could regulate is if a piece of artwork was placed on a property that had parking lot, and there's drives, and they're obstructing sight lines for vehicles or pedestrians, or they're taking up a parking space, or, then we can regulate it from that perspective, say that's not a good placement, put it somewhere else.
But that's regulated by existing code.
Yes.
And I guess the other thing that we would regulate would be if the public art actually became promotion or became a sign, right? If it was not just art, but it was something that was part of the promotion and like a sign of the business.
Yes, there was
That would
one
be
in,
regulated.
recently in Tip City, Ohio, where I used to live. It was right there on I-75, and it was a mural on the back of an auto business. And they said it's just a mural, it's just art, but it had a chemical formula on there that related to the fuel that they make. So it's like, no, it's related to your business. It's a commercial speech. It's not political speech or free speech. So then they just got rid of that, protect that chemical formula, and now it's just a mural. Now it's just art. So,
We actually had one here in Medina, Jonathan, where it was an anchor in a front yard, and wouldn't you know, the homeowner ran a cruise business where they booked cruises. But the argument was, oh, no, that's just a piece of art in our front yard.
Decoration.
yeah, I've had a couple business owners recently, or one business asked me about doing a mural, and I said, well, as long as it doesn't have any iconography or text that indicates what your business is, and it's
They
just.
lost that.
They did lose that
Yes.
one, yeah.
The property owner?
The court ruled that was, because what the testimony was, I think in the depositions or the case, was that they direct people to the house.
Look for
by-
the anchor.
yes, look for the anchor.
And they did it out of that house.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah, well, that's certainly.
Street.
Right, Eastland. Yes, yes.
So,
So that-
that's where art becomes actually commercial speech, and
Yes.
then we can regulate commercial speech.
So that leaves us with really just to look at public art in the historic district, and the historic district is regulated already to a degree by the Historic Preservation Board. So it would really be would it be not a narrow regulation through the board simply at the placement of the art?
It would be the placement and the materials
Right.
of the art.
So that if it's temporary, it'd be, it would be like we had discussed, if it's temporary, like sticking scarecrows in the flower pots or whatever they do, that's simply temporary. That's no issue whatsoever. If they wanted to put up a piece of permanent art, something that was like cast in bronze or whatever, it would really be about where it was placed, and that would be something that would be reviewed by the Preservation Board.
I think that falls under the general guise and purpose of the historic district, and then reviewed by the
Well, the only
historic
place it could
preservation
be
board.
placed is on the buildings, because everything else is public.
Not all of it. Some of the sidewalks are some of the
I
property
mean,
on
there's
the.
some properties, like, some of the properties have, the front of the building is actually set back a little bit from the
Yeah.
right of way.
Oh,
Like
really?
Castle Noel, there's a little bit of paved area right in front of their walkway, the sidewalk, between the front of the building and there, where they could do
Gotcha.
some stuff. And it'd be like if you put up a fence on your property in the historic district. It's an improvement, it's a structure in the district, and it requires HPV approval.
And actually, if you look at the back of the 9 blocks, if you don't just look at the front of the 9 blocks, if you look at the back, there are bigger open places where you probably could stick something. So if in fact somebody decided to put something up, it really isn't going to be the Preservation Board's not going to look at what the art that would be particularly, like to disapprove it, but they would look at where it was going to go, and if it was really kind of what we regulate anyway, if it was safely constructed as a permanent thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like we can't regulate the text of a sign,
Right.
but we can regulate the colors and the square footage.
So this requires no legislation, because we already have it covered, or is there any amendment
Well,
that we need to make?
I think it would be good, I do, in here, there's to amend 1105.77, which is the definition section of the zoning code, just to put it in there as a definition, as a zoning, something that is regulated in the physical nature. So it'd be just defining public works of art.
Okay,
And then an amendment to 145, chapter 145 of the administrative code, to just put in public works of art as a category of review, and something that has a little bit of requirements or review requirements in that code. And that 145 would be just, city council review, but 1105.77 would require, is an amendment to the zoning code, which requires planning commission review first prior to city council. So
that's,
we could just time them to where they all come to, if the committee wanted to suggest these changes, I can start with the planning commission piece sooner and then kind of bring them at the same time through to the city council process.
okay, so we don't need to take any action on it tonight? Or we do?
Unless you want to say, go ahead, Jonathan, you start putting it through the process. I think that kind of sounds
Could you
like.
start with planning commission, and then you said as that worked through, then you'd bring the council piece at the same time?
Yeah, the amendment to 145 would be the piece that would come, I'd start that process up after kind of the planning commission, and then bring the other pieces.
And this already went to the Historic Preservation Board?
It did. I think I'm going to bring it again just because it's been almost 2.5 years. It's kind of long in the tooth, their review. I think it's good to just take it back to them as an amendment. So So 145 actually would be, you know, it would be a good idea also to take it through the Historic Preservation Board as an amendment for the 145 amendment.
I'd say, I mean, I don't know, I'd say go ahead and do it, because that way we're not really creating anything new. We're just making a minimal change to what, you know, to the review for the Historic Preservation Board, just to cover some very,
Because you can't regulate content.
you can't regulate content, but some very specific things, and then it's off the book, I mean, it's off our, then it's taken care of. I think.
Now, some art can be subjectively amoral, or, so that question can come, that may come up, you know,
But
but I think
that's a tough
that's gonna
one.
be an outlier of what typically would come under these
I
regulations.
think kind of like the collection boxes, if it comes up,
Yeah.
then we'll deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, judges have dealt with that before.
Yeah, I can't
They'll
tell you
know when
what
they
it is,
see
but
it.
I know it when I see it. Yeah. Paul?
And Jonathan, on 145, the area that is in italics is what you want to add, correct, or amend? Correct?
To add, and then the strikeout part that I have on the second page of my memo, just removes the notice requirement that was put in 12 by Greg Hannon. We don't have any other notice requirements in the HPB review process, so I don't know why we would incorporate it just for this one, a 45 day process.
Has Greg Heber looked at this?
No, but when I start moving it into the next steps in front of the two boards, the board and commission, I'll run it through him as well.
Okay, because I know sometimes he likes to look at the wording, and, you know, he'll see something in there that we don't see, and he can bail us out of some
Right.
long-term
Oh, yeah.
headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure before the boards and before council that he's blessed it.
Yep.
That's the norm, of course.
Okay. And the other reason I question the public works of art here, Jonathan, goes back to the comment that you made earlier, that if we, you know, codify things, we tend to create a hassle for ourselves from, you know, the criminal versus the civil aspect. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you know what I mean. Whereas if we don't put anything in there, we could leave things more to the civil side and leave ourselves a little wider berth of what we can do and what we can regulate. Or what we can say is fits with the community and what doesn't.
I mean, the other side is, you know, this is a project that precedes me, so I was, when I was told about it, still kind of lingering to let's move it through, so I said, okay, well, there was some desire and need to want this code, so I just said, you know, here's my take on it now. Now, I'm not saying this is what I'm saying has to happen. If the committee or the council or planning commission said, let's not even redo it, because you could look at the other pieces of the review standards under the HPB review process in 145, and you could stretch to say improvements to buildings, alterations to buildings, alterations to sites could encompass everything. So we could leave it less specific and capture everything still, or we could be specific and deal with the subject matter specifically, or we could keep it more general.
I don't think you're dealing with the subject matter, you're just dealing with how it is
Well,
positioned.
I mean, art, public art as a subject matter, not the subject matter of the art, is what I'm saying. So, I mean, we could be a little more, we could give more specificity to the process and the regulation, or we could keep it less and keep it under what's there already and just interpret alteration to be a wider net than what
Well,
it
I
has
guess
been
the
in the
question is
past.
if we focus on it now, everybody's gonna be focusing on it. We've been living for 60 years with nothing, and
Well, at least since 1989, when the historic district was created. But yeah, but, I mean, that's the other way, is that we can, I can go back, I can take a look. I think under the building alteration category of change of improvements that require HPB review and approval, you could say that public art on a site, on a building, is an alteration, and that would require review. And then we can just do that and deal with it as a building improvement, like if they were changing out the cornices the cornice on the building. Just treat it the same way as a alteration to the building.
I would say I looked at it, if you look at, you know, when we looked at it, I think it's been, I don't know, I think it was a couple of years ago, I think we first, brought this up. Originally, a lot of communities have like a full board. I mean, a board that is the review board of public, public art, or they have a commission of public art. And I think when we originally talked about that, we said, well, we're not gonna decide that this looks good or doesn't look good, so so I guess I'd see two sides of this. One is what we have that you've just discussed is a pretty minimal, is a really, just a small overview, really, of some very minor parts of it with nothing to do with the content of the art within just the district. But as realistically, we don't have anybody, nobody's brought any public art to us that I know of other than those bees that the school put up, and that was a temporary thing. So, realistically, we could say, go with what you just said. Is it possible that we can just, if something comes up, we can try to get it covered by what we already have? And if it becomes an issue, we could come back.
Well, he's talking about private. Public, I'm of the opinion that if something goes on public, my personal opinion as a council, I wouldn't want another board making a decision what goes on public property, because councils change, and why would we want a board to say?
I'm not proposing a board.
Okay. No, but I mean, that's what we were talking about way before, is that if something goes on public property, I think that we should have the say, or whomever sits in the seats should have the say of what it is.
Well, that was my point, there was some cities have a board that is like, it's like we have the Uptown Park Commission, they have a board that would say yes or no on let's put a statue or do whatever, a fountain in the Uptown Park, and then that, I'm pretty sure that board then would have to go somewhere else to a council or someplace, I'm not sure, it's been a while, to get a final approval. But that seems like a pretty cumbersome thing, and that's why I think what we were talked about here just a minute ago seemed like a pretty minor change to what we have, which just kind of give a few guidelines to the Historic Preservation Board and let them handle it. On the other hand, if that's not amenable to everybody, we don't have any ongoing issue with it, and if you think we could stretch what we have and try to cover it until something comes up, I can live with that also.
I'd rather Mr. Hubert determine though, because sometimes he's gonna say, well, building alteration means building alteration and putting a picture, a mural on.
Right.
He's gonna have to say whether he's comfortable legally that that's within the definition of alteration, because sometimes he doesn't.
That's true.
Yeah, so now if he's okay with it as is, I agree that we may be fine just the way we are. And I also agree that nobody's banging down our doors trying to get things put up. But if he says not, that he would rather it be specified with the recommendations that Jonathan brought first, then if the commission wants to give us latitude so as not to delay it, if he's okay with calling it alteration, we'll leave it as is. If he's not and feels that alteration means actually changing the building versus art, then we can proceed with the former and define it, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good way to go. I'm comfortable with that. I am too. Jim,
Makes sense to you, John?
Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes he looks at it through a
Hubert never does that.
Through a litigation?
glasses.
Glasses, what?
Everybody's cross-examination.
He's got his people, so he's all right.
In the sign code, which Jonathan's gonna, I guess Jonathan and Greg are working on, which we can just discuss if you want to for a few minutes, really, because we don't have the legislation, and so we're gonna have to table that and come back with it. What I was looking at when I brought this up was simply this: we have some pretty consistent sign code violations that are constantly attended to, and it seemed to me that if we had a stepped or graduated some sort of a penalty. For example, if there's a violation of the sign code and Jonathan sends somebody out to go and take care of it, and then the next day the same person violates the sign code again, and then they take care of it again, and then 3 weeks later the same person violates the sign code again, which is pretty frequent, they have no reason to not keep violating it. And a lot of the violations that occur, because we have our sign code is so good compared to most communities, a lot of violations occur on the weekend because, we're not 24/7 in that department. And so there are people that stick up flags, signs, banners, and whatever, and take them down, they put them up on the weekend. Every time we send somebody out, it's gotta cost us money, and then we send them out again, and it costs us money. And so what I talked to Jonathan about and talked to Craig Huber about is there a way that we can look at the sign code and see if there's some way, you know, to address those in an intermediate way? So it's not to the point where you just take people, you know, you take people to court, but there can be some sort of a penalty that, you know, if you continue to violate this code, you will pay. Because otherwise, we are, you know, all the people that aren't violating are actually paying for the time and the trouble and the work to keep the sign code in compliance.
And we do have some, if I recall, some portions of the code already have graduated penalty clauses. I don't know which ones, but I remember seeing something, if you do it once, you're convicted of this, if you do it again, I can't remember what it was.
Planning and sign code or the ordinances?
One of the ordinances, not in the planning and sign code,
Yeah.
just kind of, I don't remember which one.
Disorderly conduct starts as a minor misdemeanor. If
Something
it
like that.
persists, it goes to even for the loud music ordinance.
Right.
Starts as a minor misdemeanor. If you're convicted 2 or more times, it goes to them 4.
We could kind of mirror that kind of
So,
language
Sure.
in the sign
sure.
code.
But just for clarity, even if it starts, like even the minor misdemeanor, they still have a right to go to court. It's not, we can't just fine them without some due process, so. they
And I don't think it
have-
could be ever criminal.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it could be ever criminal. I think it's just a civil kind of matter that you
Well,
get fines for, and then you.
Yeah, but even if you're finding them, I think you still have the right to go to court, and
Right.
you're saying I didn't violate it, and we're saying you did, and there has to be some sort of due process,
Right.
even to get to the fine.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we can't just say, well, you gotta give us the money.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So if we can, you know, if you can continue to work on that. The other thing that we talked about, and I think is important, and it's way short of legislation, is simply, I think that there are people that come in and start small businesses or management changes at a business, and they're not really aware of some of the particulars of the sign code. I mean, we can say, well, it's on the website, or you can get the thing, but I mean, I'm not sure that they know. And that it would be good when people move in, or maybe on an annual basis, to make sure we, you know, if we go and we have an issue, that we can go and say here, you know, this is how it is, and this is what the compliance is, and we want you to do it. Like you're talking about talking to people about the collection boxes, we're still small enough that we can have that kind of a, you know, conversation with people and not have to do something that's a penalty. And I think that on some annually or whatever to businesses, if we could send out a letter, a newsletter or something, just tell people to remember these are the codes and.
Well, I don't think I'd want the first offense to be anything more than just, hey, you gotta be aware of this, and now you're aware of it.
No, I totally agree, because if you go out and you say, this is a problem, people go, yeah, I didn't know about it, I apologize, or whatever, they take care of it, don't apologize. That's fine, but if you have to go out 3 or 4 times, and keep going out 3 or 4 times because people say fine and they take it down, and then they just stick it back up because they know he's gonna go away and he's gonna get busy doing his other work.
And he
So-
takes Saturday and Sundays off.
Yeah, I've asked him to work on Saturdays.
Craig never did.
I've not had compliance, so.
He's salaried, so he should.
Or you have councilmen running around with their iPads taking pictures and then sending them to John.
I don't do that because I forgot that there was a camera in my iPad.
Well, I did, that's why I got these.
But you're right, Bill, I mean, most, you know, from traffic to general offenses, you know, most people, 80-90% of the people, once you make them aware of what the violation is, they're fine. It's the 5 to 10% that we deal with. That
Right.
Nobody's gonna tell them what to do, and as soon as you turn your back, they're gonna do it. Or they're gonna do it, I mean, that's why we escalated the sound ordinance when I was the police chief, is they said, I'll pay the $100 fine, I don't care, I'm gonna play my music as loud as I want.
Yeah.
So then we got
Yeah.
down to it, okay, do you wanna play your music, can't go to jail for 30 days? What do you wanna do? Sooner or later, you gotta make the penalty sufficient enough to correct the behavior.
And the good thing about that approach, though, is the people that do comply, or the people that do cooperate, they're never affected by the
Exactly.
legislation.
Exactly.
Because they're going to behave.
Yes.
It's that small group, the only reason that we have most of the laws we have is
Right.
because there is those outliers who are just going to say, I'm going to do whatever.
That's the point that I was gonna bring up with the donation boxes. The people are coming in from outside, they just drop it off in the middle of the night and leave. They don't care what our laws say.
Exactly.
They're just gonna do it.
Well,
And where the people that are listed in here would be following the law.
Right.
Anyway,
And I guess I would want to see people come and drop those boxes off at night and see that kind of spread out across town before I want, you know, I think we want to
Well, I
come
think I'd want
up
to be
with.
notified by the property owner, back, take those boxes.
Yeah.
Scrap.
Because I don't know that we have any issue like that at the moment. I don't know that we have
I don't
any
think- I
issue
don't
like
think we
that.
As of this morning, we've had no complaints.
Right, none. It's kind of like we've not had anybody apply to put up a statue.
Right.
But it is good to look at them. It was an interesting discussion. Like I said, I've never given those collection boxes a second's thought. I have, like, somebody comes and picks that stuff up off my doorstep. You know,
Yeah,
the
VA.
VA comes and it's
That's
quite
what we do,
convenient, so. You okay with that, Jim? They just keep looking at that?
Sounds good.
You good? John?
Yep.
Anything else? Paul?
I'm good, thank you very much. Nice
Nina?
meeting.
Good. Mayor?
Nope.
Jonathan?
I'm good.
Kathy?
Do you want to bring the public arts back to special legislation, or do you want to just take it to finance?
I don't,
If
I
we
think
have to
the-
change the code.
Yeah, I think it's, Greg reviews it, we use existing codes, and it just goes away.
Well, I think it would.
If we do the
Oh,
public
okay.
work, the minor changes that I have in my memo,
You gotta go through a lot of stuff.
then we do planning commission, the committee said if Greg wants
Then
that
we'll go
path,
ahead.
then we go
Okay.
to the planning, to the boards and commissions, and then through the city council
Right.
steps.
Yeah, I think her question was though back to special legislation
If
or
we
on the
do bring it
finance.
back, yeah,
If we bring it back, we'll probably have finance at that point, because we need everybody
Yep.
on council to,
that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to go through all the boards and
Yeah.
commissions first.
yeah. But then
Right.
once at that
We
point, then
understand that.
council's got to approve it, so it might as well
So
come
it
out.
has to go through finance, yeah.
Right, but not back here.
I don't know,
I don't
because
see any
everybody,
purpose in coming.
No.
yeah, because we all have to review it again.
Right.
Everybody does.
Right.
Very good, thank you.
meeting's adjourned.